Put the slide, sir. He already put the slide.
Can I say join audio or later?
No need to join audio. Your audio is here, through here.
Okay.
Through this.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay.
Now-
In 3, wait, and 2.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
All right. We just finished the cluster sampling technique that you all, I think, understand or get some picture. When you selected clusters and within the cluster you don't take the whole clusters because sometimes cluster is too big. It contains so large population. So you can do other sampling technique to choose the sampling unit from the cluster until you reach your desired number, of population of sample. Sorry. Okay. Multi-stage sampling. Oh, sorry. This is the Thai. The multi-stage sampling uses a combination of methods. You see, different sampling methods may be used in each sampling stage until you obtain, the desired unit of analysis that you want. You see, it could be one stage. You can use this sampling technique. The next stage, another sampling technique, and then until you get the result that you want. That's why they call it multi-stage sampling. Now, second type of sampling is called non-probability. The first type is probability sampling, where each sampling unit has an equal chance to be selected into your sample. You know the probability of each unit to be selected. But the non-probability sampling, you do random sampling also, but you don't know the probability of each unit of the population to be selected into your sample. There are many ways to do this. The first one is called convenience sampling. Have you ever heard the term? You do it at your convenience. Sometimes they call it accidental sampling, which means if you want to collect a sample of 100, you go into the street or standing at the corner. Whoever come to the corner, you include that person to be in your sample. You see, and then you pick up the sampling unit at your anywhere you like. You can choose the first person that cross the street coming to your corner, and then the second you take it. You have no way to know the probability of the whole population to be selected into your sample. Some people try to reduce bias. They say every 5th people who come toward me would be selected into the sample, like that. That is called the convenience sampling or accidental sampling. If you heard the term, it is done that way. They do it in a not so serious survey, like what do you think about the Christmas this year? What do you think about the Christmas tree being displayed in the Christian home? You just randomly pick people at anybody as you please. Now the second one is called quota sampling. Quota sampling is done this way. If you know the proportion of the population, you can assign the quota of the sample based on that proportion. For example, if you know that the population of male to female is say 6:4, and then you can get a quota of 60 men and 40 women if you want 100 sample. So you assign a quota according to the proportion of the population. But if you don't know the population proportion, you can assign any quota. 50-50 is the most common practice, because we assume that there will be an equal size in the population. The third one is the purposive sampling. This method is used to meet specific purposes of the research project. For example, if you want to study or to do the comparative study of the rural development problems in the poor areas, and then you cannot randomly pick the areas. You have to go specifically to the poor areas because that is your purpose of your project. I think about probably 40 years ago, I did one research project where I still remember almost every scenario of that project. At that time, we had a problem of communist insurgencies throughout the country. The northeastern part is the severest problem of insurgency at that time. So the National Research Council get a grant from the government to do research in that particular area. So I have to go to the government and select the areas that has the most or the severest problem of insurgency and pick some to be in my sample. You know what we do? We have to have a kind of military police car to go in front of us and come behind us and things like that. We have a Land Rover Jeep at that time, which is used by mostly governmental agencies. So if you're driving a Land Rover Jeep into a communist insurgency area, that is the most dangerous thing that you can do. So I go to the household and talk about the development problem that they have, like whether they lack, water supply or medical care and things like that. So many questions in the questionnaire. They would be very scared to answer because I go like a representative of the government. Let's see, police, military, and things like that. And then I develop a close friendship with the village headman. And he told me that, after you guys left at night, there'll be another group of people coming and ask us, what did they ask you about, things like that. So it's very, I feel pity for them because if I have to live in such a village, it is very, very difficult, very dangerous. Every civilian government official has to wear a uniform similar to the soldiers at that time. And then we went to we call it the kind of accelerating development unit of the army. And the commander of that camp is very, very excited to see people from Bangkok, researchers from the government come. So he invited us for lunch. And then we have to go and have lunch where, some people carrying like a rifle like this to guard us, and then we are having lunch. And then what this commander did was at that time was that he would have a kind of movies, almost like a propaganda movie against the communists, of course. And then when we got back to Bangkok, the following week, he was beheaded by the communists. That commander, the rank at that time was special colonel. If he could wait another year or two, he could be a major general of the army already. This is very purposive sampling that I won't forget. Really, we pick up area according to the purpose of the research project. That's called purposive sampling. If you want to study about the rich, go and pick up the rich. If you want to study about the landslides, well, not landslide, but backsliding Christians, you have to pick up their group and why they backslided from the faith, things like that. You cannot use any random technique or anything. you have to use purposive sampling. Now, the determination of sample size. In those days where the computer is not prevalent, they use a simple formula produced by a man named Yamane, and his sample calculation for sample size is very easy. A small n represents the sample size, capital N is the number of population, and you divide it by 1 plus NE square 2. E is a sampling error. And Yamane said, just put 0.5. You allow the discrepancy between statistic and parameters at 5% error, 5% mistake, like that. So with this formula, you can calculate any sample size of any population. You can suppose you have 1,000 population, you replace n with 1,000 and then calculate that way. You have 10,000, 100,000, you can do the same. And they even produce a table for calculating the sample size for you at the appendix, on the appendix of the book of the statistics book. You see, this is a sample size calculation. If you don't like this one, you can go for a more sophisticated ways of calculation, but the result is very, very much the same. So Yamane was very famous for his simple formula. I don't know how he could come up with such a formula. I have no idea, but it is presented in many ordinary statistics book. But for a more sophisticated one, they would have sampling theories and so many things difficult to understand. All right, I think we are done.
So he doesn't use the word standard deviation, or that's a technical term.
Yeah.
Technical term.
They don't use. For Yamane, they use this very simple formula. What I plan to do from now, and I want to ask for your opinion also, that my slides is to be used for my explanation. It is not done professionally, but I can do it in a more professional way with the help of the applications, AI or whatever. That I can produce a beautiful slides, and I can make the word within each slide more concise, not lengthy like this. This is just almost like my lecture notes. When I teach, I don't want to carry the lecture notes, so I just use these slides, and people can see on the screen about what I am talking about. That is my intention to do, and it would also be done with the statistics that I plan for the second part of a research methodology course, and also the management, the leadership course. I learn a little bit slow in terms of these high-tech things, and Pastor Gerard would learn it more quickly than me, and then I have to keep up with him. But I try very hard. But you keep changing terminology every time I meet you, and then I have to learn new things all the time. So I hope that the lesson that we have briefly learned from this course would be of some help when you want to do your own research. It doesn't have to be related to your study. People can do research all the time in various areas. And in one of the department store, not very far from here, there is a burger shop. This happened like perhaps 10-15 years ago. This burger shop has the same quality as Burger King, or if not, roughly the same as McDonald's. There is also McDonald's in the same building, but this burger shop, when they started their business, nobody went into their shop. Nobody went into their shop, and of course the owner want to find out why. Here what the research, because you are seeking the new knowledge, you are seeking the answer why nobody comes into my shop, and of course within a year they went out of business. What approach you would like to give them the answer that why customers didn't want to? Because everything looks the same. The setting, the table and the counter and the picture of the food and the item on the menu is almost the same. I don't want to say the name of this burger shop. Let's call it a burger shop. But why? If you are the owner of that restaurant, how would you get the answer that you want to know?
From thinking, or from thinking about it, or from sampling?
No, you just tell me why people don't come into my restaurant. That's the question.
There's wisdom quoting that says that you are paid for the difference, not for the similarity with the others.
Okay.
So if you can come up with something uniquely, the flagship dish or item for your shop, that's what people come to pay.
Oh, okay. That is very scientific.
And of course, the other thing is you're talking about counterfeiting, or the secret recipe is not quite the recipe that has been embraced. So customers would probably see the difference and not really like it. That's why they lose out on the
Okay,
business.
that's also quite
It's not original.
I went to try in that restaurant a few times because that's not crowded. I like it, but I think the taste is not that much different. Taste is like any hamburger made by McDonald's, because anybody can make hamburger, right? It's not that
the difference.
that's
People would go for the uniqueness or something like that.
Yeah. From what Lian said is that the reason people go to the restaurant,
Unique.
good taste, maybe cleanliness, maybe good service or whatsoever. You develop criteria, and then you check, you talk to the people, why don't you go to that restaurant? Things like that. But what the owner of the restaurant did was very interesting. They went to ask people who are very successful in this type of burger business. They consider that any advice from that expert would answer their problem. In Chinese proverb, they say that a word of advice from an expert is worth more than 1,000 pages of book that you read. So that is very typical authoritarian. You go to the authority of the subject and want the answer from him. And also they resort to the mystical mode also. What's the English word? Feng shui or something? Yeah. They say that the feng shui is not that great. It's near the entrance and things like that, and I don't know what else. But anyway, very mysterious ways of explaining. And then he said, yeah, this is also true. But changing location from the department is not that easy, and you have to book in advance until there is some way you can plot, and then you can start. A second, that's interesting. The third one is they think that normally people won't stop at the first shop. If you go into a row of shops, you would never stop and buy the first shop. You would try to survey it for a while, right? You don't get married to the first one who come to you. Normally you would wait a little and see. Things like that. And since his was the first shop, after you open the door of the department store, it is there on your right. So that's why people keep walking past by day after day, day after day. And that would be a rationalistic mode of inquiry. And also what Lian said, that they never did. They never did any research scientifically why people didn't want to eat in their restaurant. They go through those, series of approaches to the knowledge. So when we come back to our theology, we can use a combination of the four inquiry methods to find the answer that we want. We shouldn't be restricted to the authoritarian or the mystical. And the mystical mode is going on in Thailand right now. So many of them in the pulpits of the church. And you should not use the Aristotelian deduction or the rationalistic mode alone. Like what I was telling Pastor Gerard, that people say that if Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever, 2,000 years ago, he would still be doing the same today. And that is you base on that rationale to come up with the answer. And once the answer doesn't fit your expectation, and then you start to question many things. So I want you to listen to all of you also about how we can make use of our knowledge in research methodology, not only for our study, but maybe for our ministry, for our daily living or whatsoever. Just please let me know. The official lecture is stopped right now, so you can just you can give me your opinion frankly, that what you plan to do with the things that you learn. Remember, the wise man of the East said, the essence of knowledge is having it to apply it. If you cannot apply the knowledge that you learn, you haven't reached the essence of that knowledge yet.
I think most of our colleagues as ministers, speaking from the viewpoint of pastors, long tenure pastors who have churches, would be one way to classify the kinds of students that we get typically in King's College.
Okay.
One of the key competencies that a pastor will need is the ability to read his people.
Okay.
Or to profile his people. For example, when a couple comes to him for premarital counseling, they're asking you to help them understand each other before they get married. Or in a post-marriage situation or a post-traumatic situation where a couple is having problems with their marriage, they're coming to you, and what are they asking? They're asking you to help them to understand each other. Or a disgruntled church member who wants to leave for another place, help them to understand why there's so much grievance and so on and so forth, so that when they go to another place, it doesn't happen again, or they can be warned. So I would say that the management of people, or the understanding of the relationships between members would be one of the key areas where a typical local assembly is a perfect test bed for this profiling to take place. Profiling not in a bad way, but in a good way, that we understand each other better and find our place, as Lizelle said, to find your place in the body of Christ, without having to copy anybody else or be envious of anybody else. So I suppose other people have taken this idea of modalities and applied it in the business setting or the marketplace to reduce friction and to eliminate as much as possible envy, competition. Each one knows who they are, what they are, and they focus on that genius rather than trying to waste time busybodying, looking, comparing each other.
We also know how to increase productivity and focus area of training. Because if this person is this modality and you try to make him or her into another modality with all kinds of training, you only increase this much. It's not like this much. So you have to assign the right job and also the right training skills, and then you can see that this person becomes like a bird, fly freely and swim faster, and this kind of thing, because it's in his element.
Is it good, or is it possible for a pastor to do a profile of modalities for his congregation? Is it useful to do so? Is it possible to do so?
It depends on the pastor. If he or she feels that is useful, by all means. But actually, he's doing it and subconsciously all the time. Especially if he's new, right? But if he's the founding pastor of that church, he will. I mean, that's why Jesus went out overnight and he chose. When it says he chose 12, it means there were a lot more that he could choose from. But why did he choose these 12? He knew that this one was the eye, this one was the tongue, this one was the hand, this is the heart, this is the organizer, this is the leader, and blah, blah, blah.
He knew all men.
He knew all the different types because he is the perfect, the Vitruvian ideal of modal excellence.
You look at the marriage seminars or those premarital counseling, their curriculum.
Yes.
There's one section always on profiling of identity or self, image thing, identity, mainly identity. And they always try to say you got to learn your spouse or your partner should know about you, and the way they employ secular methods. Then you look at it and say this is not biblical.
MBTI,
So for a lot of times I look at it and say this is really no good. If everything else is biblical, why this part is not biblical? Study of people is not biblical. Where can I find support in terms of understanding one another? Where can I find scripture to support these points that they have? And I find that usually this paragraph is very badly written. So when we understand modality, I say, wow, this is the place to replace it. Let's replace it with something biblical. And then we test it with all the couples that we interviewed during those before COVID, all those years that we have. You can see all the planes coming in. There are lots of them.
Then you can come up with a handbook for marital counseling.
Yeah, premarital counseling.
Premarital counseling.
And counseling.
The use of modalities.
So we ask the pastors, when we sit them, we test it by looking at if this profile, this modality and this modality come together, and we know the strength of each one, the conflict will be there in this area. So we test it, and then we just first we understand this person's modality and the men's modality and the women's modality, and we know that if you are this, then your conflict area we understand very easily. So we test it by saying that, okay, this is the area you will find a lot of trouble, conflicts. We all agree. Or if you are saying in your mind, you know that this is a conflict.
Has anybody in this room ever attended a marital or premarital seminar?
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah.
Okay.
We
Because
have.
we always on the judges. So I have to.
They talk about what they talk about. What kind of house you're going to live? How many children you're going to have? What kind of jobs are you having? How much quality time do you spend together? Things like that are very external. They don't talk about who are you.
Okay.
What are you? How does this DNA? What's the chemistry between potassium nitrate and sodium when you put the fire? Boom! Why do you explode? What makes you tick and what ticks you off?
Okay.
So even before we can write that module, however, Dr. Prisha, on premarital counseling and modalities, we have first, coming back to your most fundamental premise, we must first make sure that modality is real.
Yes.
It's not just a pattern that we observe and we think is real. We have to make sure that modalities and time, it has to elapse, and sampling size, we must have more than 4,000 people that we have personally spoken to. We must have 8,000, 10,000, 12,000, and it must be in all countries and all nationality, all languages and ethnic, to make sure that we're not just reading into the Bible a pattern that is not actually there. In which case, we would be responsible for introducing heretical teaching. That's why we are taking more time, and in purposeful sampling, I would call it profiling, where with each friend, with each colleague, with each non-Christian, whether it's a videographer like Nat Suwana, I don't care whether he's Christian or not, or whether it's someone at Mountain View, I want to see whether it fits or it doesn't fit. Or a couple like Ode and his fiancée, it's quite clear that they do fit into two separate categories as far as the hat is concerned. Well, what about the elementals?
Yeah, I listened to some seminar on this topic. One of the topics that I remember is called "Happy Though Married." So that struck me. There seems to be some assumption behind this. That's why I said that happy though married.
Which means married.
And then talk about compatibilities. If you have 4 compatibilities, perhaps your marriage life would sail through very easily. If not, you can have some struggles. What are those compatibilities? You must have physical compatibility. If you are 80, you cannot marry a 27 years old girl because that's not compatible physically. You see, that could you can foresee the problem already.
Except in the case of Boaz.
Yeah, you can pick up Boaz.
It is to show that it's possible. Right?
Yeah, it's possible.
That's a calling. Sometimes
Calling.
Maybe because not the unique case. Probably.
There's a general wisdom and there's a specific which cannot be.
I like it when you suggest Boaz.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what is very current, the idea of the love languages. Whether how the husband and wife really need to understand each other's love languages. How true is that? I'm not sure.
A lot of people use that as an indicator to predict the future problem of the couple. They can see it from day one when they got married in the church. They just observe the body language. You see, second compatibility is the social compatibilities, even social backgrounds compatible with one another. It's easier than a different background. If you marry a person of different faith, for instance, it would have the probability of running into trouble in the future. Or that's why the Bible, that's why God prohibits the unequal yoke in this time. And also the culture. There are many of my friends who marry the foreigners and doesn't last that long, because it's not the language, it's the way we think that represent a culture, our culture, and his or her culture, which is different. What else? I'm sorry. Physical, social. Okay, spiritual compatibility is important. It's easier to have a level of faith. We even have one saying in the Thai that you can communicate better with people of the same level of faith
without thinking.
I don't know. Another one could be intellectual compatibility. Yeah, it's that you finish your PhD and then you marry a non-school, uneducated man, then you can have problem, because there's some couple like that in Thailand, because they say that love has no boundary. There is no compatibility language about love. It's always compatible if you love one another. I don't think whether that is the right or correct premise or not to start with. So the role of the parents comes into picture. Parents should see better than the.
So in modalities, we would say that compatibility is actually a myth. It doesn't exist, because if you know your modality, then compatibility is non-negligible. It's a negligible factor, because your self-awareness is most important. But in order to understand your modal self-aware status, it does require a certain intellectual, a certain spiritual, a certain cultural, a certain social, and a certain physical quality. So the first thing now when I look at my own children, when they go dating somebody, I don't ask about the bank account, how tall he is, how what is the religion, what's the faith, what's this, what's that, what do they look like, or give me a picture to see whether it has resonates with me. No, the first thing I want to know is what is the person's modality, and what is your modality. So that makes it very simple in premarital counseling. You sit down the couple, do discovery diagnostic, start with modality, then we talk about...
Did you do that with your daughter?
Yeah,
wow.
Of course.
Wow. Okay.
Not
now
just daughter, the other partner.
Okay.
Have to.
I have two questions. One is that, do you think that people would be naturally attracted to the same modalities or different modalities, or from that on?
You're talking about in a boyfriend-girlfriend situation?
Yes, exactly.
No.
They don't
clearly there is there is attraction and repulsion, but as to which repels and which attracts, it is very clear that in the periodic table of human behavior, which comprises of the seven modalities on the x-axis for the male, and the seven modality or archetypes of the y-axis for female, that when you bring the two together, at that point, that husband, that wife, that partnership, there is clearly better prospects for that. including partnerships, including with corporations and companies for success. It depends on what we call the DNA, the default natural ability of each partner for both husband and wife to come together and stay together in a monogamous situation, which means that actually marriage is invented by God. Monogamy was invented by God, and once we hold to the Judeo-Christian standard, then that is true. Modality works. The moment you allow for 4 wives,
and
then forget about modality, because it goes haywire. There's no law. There's no more any law that puts me and her together permanently. So then you got a big problem, because usually the man disregard, but sometimes the women, they disregard the law, the authority of monogamy. So that's why in modalities, even my mentor, John Samuel and Skip Moen, they exactly wanted to write a book on that, but they told me it was very clear that it's only in monogamous situation with Judeo-Christian couples that you can understand when there is a pre-commitment to stay together no matter what. No matter what your modality is, no matter how different you are, to stay to the commitment. That's what tying the knot is all about. But now, the moment you can cut the knot and tie another one, forget it. It goes out the window. Nobody wants to. They will definitely reject modality because I don't want to be tied to anybody. Don't tell me I have to be a profiteer. I have to be like this. No, I can change my script. I can do anything, because behind the story, the backstory is I already divorced 3 people. So don't talk to me about modalities, right? So those who have no ethics or no morals about, and they don't accept the biblical inerrancy of the Word of God regarding husband and wife, don't even talk about modalities. It's thrown out of the window. Any sort of a fixed archetypal categorization of strata.
In our sampling counseling for all those groups that come, there's only one couple that has a similar modality. But this modality is not our diagnostic, because we didn't have much time with them. And they were a young couple, and they diagnosed themselves. And both are proistemi.
Okay.
They claim that they are both proistemi. So there's, during the whole 2 weeks stay in GBG, they are always fighting. True.
Really?
Right.
But so they claim that they won their way, but I don't think they're proistemi, because they do make up.
Yeah.
So there is something.
Typical
It could be that something else, but we didn't have time, because this is a self-diagnosis. We don't tell them which modality. They must discover themselves. You see. But today, as of today, they're still part of King's College, and they're still welcoming this course into their new churches they're forming. So they have formed many churches now.
You think that the same attracts or the opposite attracts as far as the modality is
Just like
concerned?
North Post.
Opposite poles
Pole,
attracts like poles like
Yeah.
men.
Yes.
Like there are some people who say like I can do things with my husband, and there are some people who say I can't do things with my husband. So then, of course, the other way around is the same lah. So I've seen like couples will go walk runs together, but some couples just don't want to do running together or walking together. So, and then I have an uncle and auntie who loves dancing together, and then and they go everywhere together. But there are some couples who just function better
with others.
Separately, because they can be themselves.
Well, that's a good case in point is the case of Winston Churchill and his wife. Both grew up very differently. So at breakfast table, Churchill sits here and the wife sits there, and they pass notes to each other. there's absolute silence.
Because their background.
It's not because of the British culture at that time when you are
because
rich people.
both of them need their space. That's why traditional logic says that a man should not marry his same. He should marry lower, so that she doesn't talk back to him. Okay? And of course now with every woman educated is here. That's why the man and the woman in a monogamous situation, someone has to give way. Now you look at the profile of celebrities, Elizabeth Taylor, whatever.
Wow.
They all have 4 marriages. Why? Both of them want to be the star because they're celebrity. The diaconias actually don't need to get married. They would do better being single. Because it spare you the sorrow, as according to what Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. I want to spare you the sorrow so you can be devoted to the Lord.
Yeah, so my uncle and my auntie both are diaconias.
And they came together.
Yeah, they came together and they stick together.
Good.
Yeah.
Praise the
Could
Lord.
be a misdiagnosis.
Maybe
Sometimes one of them is not a diacon.
Ultimately, it's a misdiagnosis.
Usually it's not.
Based
The
on
profile
whatever
is very unusual to have the same two persons of
the
the
blessings of misdiagnosis.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
But the Lord can cover all this and redeem all of the mistakes and whatever. So in other words, at the end of the day, there's no such thing as compatibility. As long as you're a man and a woman and you have the equipment for it, you can get married. No big deal, right?
And you follow.
But it's whether you want to make it work. In the old days, our grandfathers. Arranged marriage is a good example. Half the population in India, they have arranged marriage. You don't get a choice.
Even the Jewish people.
In the Bible, there's no such thing as dating apps and choose and first choice, second choice. No.
That's where they come from.
It's your father told you to get married. You don't see the wife until the wedding day. You lift up the veil, get a shot or whatever. but you have you have to live. You have to live with it.
14 years.
Too bad. There's no
14
such
years.
7 years, 14 years, whatever. Right?
So your periodic table doesn't dictate what kind of modalities fit each other. It's because of your research you can see.
It's just that if this is this and this is this, you can tell all the conflict areas.
That's important.
If you are this combination,
Awareness.
the conflict area is different from the other conflict area. Because each genius has certain style of doing. So what do you think between the two of us? What's our conflict area? You can tell easily, right?
I don't see it.
His modality and my modality.
So
are
what
totally
area of
different.
conflict would that be?
My genius and his genius are different. No, you can tell.
You see,
Just
if
like
I
counseling,
had
you can tell.
listen, if
Organized, not organized. Organized, not organized.
So what happened in the
Absolutely.
home? I will be screaming at why he's like that.
Pastor,
absolutely. So,
Let's listen.
So this is your
a
area of
woman,
counseling, yeah.
listen, a woman will have hit the jackpot if the man is the Elias, because he will serve. You see, Apostle Paul said, 1 Corinthians 7, because I was a Christian before I was a married man, right? Okay, so here you are. Here it is. 1 Corinthians 7. 1 Corinthians chapter 7. He says there that a man must please his wife. Okay, a man must please his wife. I don't know whether Dr. Prisha is able to please his wife, Professor Anjali. Okay, by default, that is not something I do to any woman ever. In fact, the what I want to do is I want to stay focused on whatever is in front of me, and then everything. If I see it, of course, if I'm relaxed and I'm on holiday, I don't see anything.
The love language for every couple is different. When I say some people would like their spouse to say I love you every morning, giving flowers, present or gift in special occasion like wedding anniversaries and birthday, things like that. That is the love language that he or she recognizes. If you don't do this, you don't express your love to me. If you do this, oh, okay, I appreciate it. But to some, it is not things like this, but it is of being more helpful, mowing the lawn, taking the garbage out is a way of saying I love you to some women. If you don't do that, no matter how many flowers you give her, she won't appreciate, because she doesn't read that language as love. It's just like duties or whatsoever. That Anjali and Mai would be like this. She would prefer me to do so many things at home, and then if I did that, she would consider a kind of language that I want to express, that I love her.
So it's because of her modality.
Yeah.
A different power collateral will appreciate roses and all the other kind of things, sweet things. So I think in the world they talk about love language, but where's the biblical base? So if you come back to modalities in the Bible, you can tell. A didascal love language, how would you please a wife that's a didascal? By her books. Because she consumes knowledge. She likes clarity. Don't come with her with pole. For example, you've got to be a yes or a no, not a pole position. Don't have lateral thinking, because she cannot take it. So you look at a person like profiteer, you must give them room. This wife, profiteer wife, must have lots of rooms in creativity. Don't limit, don't come with her with a plan. Let's go here, 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 here. Oh, you cannot stand. You must give her space to explore. And when she says certain thing, listen to her. Don't say cannot, no. She'll be so frustrated. So you deal with modalities this way. You look at a diaconia, it's like, why is this wife of mine wakes up so early and then can spend 20 hours, doing one thing in his room, researching or baking this cake? And why she's such a wasteful person? Because she wants to create this beautiful design on the cake, but she throw away everything just to get that beautiful little thing. So because of her modality, perfection, and if she cannot get perfection, she beats herself. So if you understand modality, you understand your wife or your spouse or your husband easier, and then you know how to please. That's the love language.
So how you please a leader? How you please a leader?
A proistemic leader is
Get
a
out of their
mission-minded.
way.
Get out of their way.
You know why? You know why? A leader is a pilot with 1,000 gadgets and dials, and they're watching every dial and every meter and every flicker and every light all over. Have you seen the cockpit of a 747? The switches are not just here. They're here, and they're here, and they're here. So what happens is, in aviation school they teach, pilots go through stress. And what is the main stress? It's called saturation point. When they reach the saturation point, don't talk to them. Because they don't even know their own name and their birthday. At that point, they don't even know what time it is, because they're watching so many things. So in that sense, when I say get out of their way, when they are on the yoke, in the cockpit, and they are just about to land the plane or take off or avert something, or there's some emergency, the best is let them do the job and let them lead at that point. And later on, you can, when everything's stabilized, So obviously in high stress situations, especially with now the world, they call it type A. Actually it's proistemic.
Or alpha male.
Alpha males,
personality.
yeah.
These are the world's term.
I remember when you mentioned about saturation point. I remember one time I was at the house of my pastor in the U.S. And the pastor is so, friendly. He's very good with people. He loves to invite people for dinner at home. And the wife is a medical doctor. She has to work very hard, and then she is standing most of the day. And after the day, she was very tired, and she doesn't seem to be happy with the idea of inviting people to come for dinner in the evening because it created a lot of work on her. I was at their houses at that time, and they start to quarrel and argue and giving reasons and support the argument of each other many times, until the wife said, but anyway, today I will not cook. I have had enough of my day at the office already, so I won't be able to cook. But the pastor doesn't know how to cook, and the guests are coming in perhaps 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And then finally he said, okay, no one is in the kitchen, out. And then the wife has to go out of the kitchen. I was out of the kitchen, and he started cooking by himself. And and then the food burnt, the curry.
Wow.
and he would just finish it and then put it on the plate. And he said, see, it's not that difficult. I can do it anyway.
And burn the food.
Yeah. Well, of course, he scraped the burning part of the food and put it in a plate, but you can smell the burnt. And then the guest comes, and people start eating. In America, you are invited to any home, you would have to compliment the food. Oh, it tastes so nice, so tasty. I've never tasted food like this before, and things like that. It's just I can understand right away when you say that. When you reach certain point, no more conversation. Conversation is wisdom already. So everybody out of the kitchen. That's the final word that he say. But he cannot do much. He has to cook by himself because guests are coming. You cannot order food from outside. It's so expensive. So expensive.
So the only solution was to do it.
So leadership training is all about increasing your capacity to handle stress and more complexity of the task, so that pilots can move from trainee pilots to becoming commercial pilots, to becoming fighter pilots, and you can handle more and more and more.
I think this is what Cheyenne would like to do in Thailand, but I think you can also do it. Perhaps you can do it much better because you understand the modalities very thoroughly. I doubt about Cheyenne understanding, and then. But if we do leadership training, we have to structure in such a way that the non-Christian can benefit. Otherwise, you have to separate the two groups of audience. One is for Christian audience, and the other one is for the non-Christian. The example would be different.
We tried with a group of Muslims and Hindus, non-Christian, just to test modality, because if it comes from Abba Father, when you were born with it, it should be evident. So we tested in this Malaysia group. It's a UBA, Universal Business Academy.
And that's Muslim.
We got Muslims, Hindus, free thinker. We chose that purposely, that group. And then we tested. And then in the end, the Muslim girl says, where did it come from? Where did you learn this? We said, from the Bible.
Yeah.
Then she said, can I have a copy of the Bible?
Wow.
Then we say, oops, this is Malaysia, we cannot give copy of the Bible.
You can? In Malaysia, you cannot give Bible?
Really? You can't really give to a Muslim unless that person confidentially does not divulge that.
So we said, the only way is that, do you have Google? Download, you can get it from Gateway, Bible Gateway.
Okay.
Do it yourself.
We didn't need it to.
Okay.
But she was intrigued by what she heard in that 3-day seminar. She says, give me a copy of the Bible. Where did it come from? I want to read it.
I went to Gokwa house one time, and then I looked through the bookshelf, there was one book called Satanic Verses, written by Rushdis.
Yes.
And then I said, can I borrow it? And then I will return it for the next trip that I go to Singapore. So he lent me that book, I read, and then the next trip that we went to Singapore, we have to go through Malaysia. We had a study trip in Malaysia, and we visited the University of Malaya, and we took a bus, not flying, so that we could see the highway of Malaysia and things like that. And we go to the very end of and then from that bus we continue to Singapore. The Lord gave me the wisdom, don't take this book with you through Malaysia. So I decided to mail it to Kok Wai instead. You see, this would be much worse than giving the Bible to the Muslim. If you happen to carry this book and then you were caught.
Wow,
See,
that's wisdom from above.
Yeah, really.
You don't know what will happen.
You see, that's why when we say that when you select the topic for your research, even thesis research, you have to consider the sensitive issue like this. Don't be so brave to do anything, because once it is published, anybody can read.
Right.
A Muslim can read. You say something about the Quran or the Prophet Muhammad, and then probably you are in trouble. Yeah. I think the lunch is here already, probably.